I'm John Dabach, and this is where I answer questions from people about their relationships and life in general. Today's email that I got in is from Rachel in Miami, Florida. And she writes, Dear John, I cheated on my husband during a really dark period in my life. And at the time, I didn't even feel guilty. I was angry, disconnected, and honestly not thinking clearly. Now that I've come out of it, I deeply regret what I did and want to build or rebuild our marriage. He says he's unsure and keeps going back and forth. How do I prove I've truly changed? And is there a point where I need to accept that it might be too late? Okay, Rachel, I appreciate the humility and taking accountability that you did cheat and that you weren't thinking clearly and all the things that you said that takes courage to write in. And a lot of people in the comments, if I talk about this kind of stuff about cheating, will say things like once a cheater, always a cheater, and just, your husband has a right to leave you and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to watch this video later, don't pay attention if any of those pop up. Everybody's relationship is their own, and your marriage and your life and your family life is unique to every single other person's life. And since I only have a paragraph to work with, I know that the context isn't going to be so crazy. So, um, a couple things. One, your husband going in and out, back and forth, tells me that he wants to make it work. If a man really doesn't want to make it work, or he is thrown in the towel, he won't entertain it at all. And a lot of men are like that. A lot of men are like that. They will just say, "Nope, I'm out. That's it. Too bad. I'm sorry you broke it and it's not fixable." So there's hope there. And that hope is sometimes the only thing you can hold on to, but hold on to it, right? If someone throws you a life raft, hold on to the life raft. You know what I mean? That's what you want to do. As far as how do you prove you've truly changed? So when we talk about rebuilding trust in a relationship where something has been broken, I have my own little kind of framework, mental model that I use to rebuild trust, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about trust. And when you say truly changed, really what is on his mind is this going to happen again? And we're all looking for that kind of insurance policy that this will never happen again. That's the nature of how we rebound. We don't need to trust people that we don't have intimate relationships with because we're never going to see them again. If somebody cuts you off on the freeway, you really don't care if they're going to sit there and apologize and say something because you're never going to see them. You flip them off or you honk the horn and you move on with your life. But the reason you need trust is because you know that there's going to be opportunities that the person can do something harmful to you. So that's what he's looking for. How do you prove that? The framework is as follows. There's four, and I'll walk through them slowly. But first is a sense of empathy. The second is an apology or remorse. The third are guardrails. And the fourth is time. And that's usually the hardest one for people. So normally what happens if somebody hurts another person's feelings, there's a tremendous urge to do two things, especially after an affair. One, apologize right away. And, sometimes there's rationalization. You even have a little bit of it. I'm not going to, I'm going to kind of call you out on, you have a little bit of it in your one short paragraph. You said, I was angry and not thinking clearly. Now, that could be an explanation, but it can also be interpreted as justification, right? I was angry and disconnected. There's a way to interpret that as it's your fault. It's your fault, my husband, because I wasn't connected to you. I was angry. Angry at what? Are you saying it's my fault that you cheated, right? There's some of that in there. And so oftentimes apologies get very muddy and sometimes they kind of stink. I'm not saying yours do, but I'm saying that's a normal part of recovery. So before you even get to the apology, you have to make it about the other person, right? If you car crash into somebody else, and let's say you break their leg and they're in a wheelchair for a while, I'm not going to make it too severe, right? But like they miss 6 months of work and they're miserable and their finances are strapped. You think they care that you were in a rush because your kids had a recital or something like that and you had to get there? Not really. Even if you made it more extreme and you were in a rush to get to the hospital, they won't care because at the end of the day, they're focused on themselves. They've been inflicted. And that's important to remember. It's really important to remember. So the first step of empathy, what does that look like in a couple? It looks like this. You sit down with the person and you say, "Tell me what happened to you. What were you experiencing? When was it hardest?" And they will push hard. I'm going to warn you, they will push very hard. They'll say, "You have no idea what I went through. I was miserable. I thought about, I'd be better off dead and all this." And it's going to be very hard to listen to that. But I promise you, this is the quickest and most painless way to do it. You lean in. You don't run away from the pain. You lean into it and say, "Tell me more. What else?" And something miraculous happens. It's a miracle. I'm telling you. They end up defending you a little bit. Not right away, but a little bit. What does that sound like? You say, "You know what? I was let me walk you through it." The person says, "I was in pain. I was thinking, oh my God, I never wanted to marry you. This is ridiculous." And you say, "That must be really hard to think you never really wanted to marry me." You go, "Yeah, it was. And I thought about all the horrible times that you lied to me, even little white lies. And I thought maybe she's just a liar." And then you say, "Oh my God, you're sitting there looking at me saying you're married to a liar. That must be completely racking your brain with everything." And what happens is they see that you're not antagonistic. And so they start defending you. They go, "Well, I mean, I know you don't always lie." That's when you know it's working. When they start saying, "And I know you didn't mean it, and I'm not saying that the affair, all these other lies are the same as the affair." They start backpedaling. Why? Because there's no one to fight. You're on the same team. So now the brain switches to, let's find common ground. That's what empathy does. When you express empathy for someone, they see that they're amongst friends. They're amongst people who are going to support them instead of fight against them. And we run to that, not right away. Sometimes we test it because it's so new and different that we need to really push. And that's why they can be mean. Sometimes the whole first session in therapy with people that I have is someone just pushing and pushing and pushing somebody. And I have to slowly get them to say, "See, you guys are more on the same page with this." And finding that middle ground, they go, "Oh yeah, we kind of are." Takes a little bit of time, but it doesn't take months. We're talking about an hour, maybe at most, if you're doing it on your own and you're a little clumsy, a couple days. If you can stay empathetic for a couple days, people really turn around very quickly. And then it doesn't mean they forgive you. It doesn't mean that they think something's changed, and they might be suspicious that it's just a phase. That's common, but that's the first step. You have to do it. If you skip any of these steps, none of them work. So you do the empathy, right? You do the empathy till it feels like we're on the same page. At that point, you repeat what they've talked about. You sit there and you show the empathy. You express it. You say, "Oh my God, you started questioning my morality. You started wondering all your life choices. That must have been very hard for you. That must have made you very sad, or were you angry?" You sit in the uncomfortable emotions. You actually are comfortable with them sitting in that yuck, in the sadness and the grief and the disgust. It's okay because you'll get out of it. You'll get out of it together if you're willing to sit with it. If he's in it by himself, he'll feel lost. He'll feel completely lost. And the other thing that comes up in people's minds, whether consciously or unconsciously, is, "Oh my God, they understand the pain they've caused." And once they understand the pain they've caused, they're not going to do it again. The reason people think you'll do it again is because you're dismissive. Because you say, "I was angry and disconnected." What's he going to say? "So if you get angry and disconnected, you're going to cheat again?" That's almost always what I hear from people. And so you have to take away any of that kind of rationalization and in the moment, any type of the explanation. Now, if they ask at a certain point, "Did it?" You could say, this is what I would recommend saying. You could say, "Look, there's no explanation that justifies it. What I did was wrong." And they say, "Yeah, but tell me why anyway." Then you say, "Look, I did it because I was angry and I was disconnected. But even if I was angry and disconnected again, I know it's wrong. I see how much destruction. It was such a mistake." You have to be able to hold both things at once. So in that empathy, in expressing it, they see, "Oh, you get it. You get how destructive it was. You get how much pain and hurt it caused." That means something. It means something to literally everybody. Anyone who wants to have a relationship, that is incredibly important. It's a tool. So that's kind of step one. After that, you can say sorry. You could say, I didn't really feel how horrible it was for you. And I see how sad you were and how confused you were and how angry you were. And I am so sorry that I did all that. Not I'm so sorry that you're hurt. Not I'm so sorry that it happened. You did it. Even if he had a role in it, and he did, usually people do have, it's two to tango kind of thing. But you take 100% accountability for your part during the apology. You say, I caused that. I did that to you, and I feel horrible. That's what an apology sounds like. And it only comes after empathy. Anything, if you go out of order or if you muddy the waters with the apology, it loses its power. It just completely disintegrates. Those are the first two steps that you can do those fairly quickly. The third step, after the person says, thank you, I appreciate your apology, or like, okay, that helps a little, whatever version. If they say, oh, okay, well, sorry doesn't cut it, then the empathy wasn't done well. I'll be honest with you. You say, okay, well, I'll keep trying to understand how much pain I've caused. Steps there. The third step is putting guardrails up, preventing it from happening again. So if they need transparency, let's say you had a lot of conversations on Tinder or on Bumble, or you texted with somebody, you say, listen, I understand how hard it is for you to trust me. I'm going to give you the right to look at my phone whenever you want. If that's going to help, I'll give you my location. You can check in on me whenever you want. I'm not trying to make you Columbo or Inspector Gadget. I will be forthcoming and tell you where I'm going so that you don't have to guess. But if you're having a moment where you feel like you can't trust me and you want to check, I'm giving you carte blanche. Now, sometimes you do that forever, and sometimes you do that for a little time, depends on the relationship. I can tell you, in my opinion, the way I do it in my own marriage with my beautiful, amazing wife, Michelle, she has access to everything, and I have access to everything. I can pick up her phone and look through it, and I can look through her text messages and stuff. Don't, but I know I can, and she knows she can too. I don't hide my passwords. I don't hide my location. If anything, I want her to know where I am, right? Because if something, God forbid, happens, she should be able to say, John's here. He hasn't answered. Something's wrong. Go get him, right? All that kind of stuff. It's not for everybody, though. I'll be honest with you. It's just not. I do think that transparency like that is the healthiest way to be in a relationship, but you make your decisions based on your life. You might have a different job. I mean, if you are in the government, for example, and you literally can't share your phone ID because there's government passwords, secrets, things like that, that's understandable, right? You can't share your location because it's a covert operation. Again, understandable. So there are always exceptions as to why this is appropriate. I'm using very obvious ones, but there are more subtle ones. So you build the guardrails, and then the last one is time. So what does time do? There's a feeling that everybody gets that you're just putting on a show because things have changed so dramatically. Now, sometimes they feel like that because it's almost as if you're reading a script. And sometimes they feel like that because it's such a drastic change and you have changed, but it's getting used to the new version of you it takes time, right? It kind of undoes the narrative that they have of who you are. And that's normal too. So you have to let it sink in. You have to let it go from your observation that they're seeing and hearing things into their cognitive memory of like, oh, this is just who they are now. And then internalizing it metaphorically into their heart, like that's who they are. Takes a little bit of time. Also, the time provides both of you with an opportunity to relive a moment from the past as it happens again. So let's say the person you had an affair with reaches out and texts you again, and you come forward with him and say, listen, I want you to see they texted me. I know it's very hurtful for you to see this. I have not responded. I wanted to bring it to you so that you didn't feel like I was hiding anything. That does a lot to build trust. That shows them if you were able to have the opportunity again, you would do different. And that is incredibly impactful. So those are the 4 steps: empathy, remorse, guardrails, and time. Now, when is it too late? If you do the empathy and you do the apology and you do it expertly, and they say, I just don't think I'll ever be able to get over it. Every time I look at you, I'm just disgusted and stuff. And you try and you try and you try and you complete, there's no explanation, there's no rationalization. You say, it's all my fault, I'm sorry, right? All of it. If you own it and own it and own it and they still can't let go, at a certain point, you have to realize maybe we need a break. Maybe we need a break to let them breathe because they're in trauma mode, right? And at a certain point, you have to say they're just not getting over it, right? But you have to be honest with yourself. Are you being as gentle? Are you being as empathetic? Are you being as patient with them as you can be? Are you never raising your voice? When they raise their voice, are you saying, I know you're hurting. I can see it. I can feel it. If you're able to do all that and they still can't get over it, and it's been a few weeks or a couple months, sometimes they need help. And if they're willing to go to therapy, sometimes they need to learn to let go. But if they say, no, I'm not interested, you have to fix it. I'm not, no, right? That's not healthy. And you see that sometimes with borderline personality where like no matter what, you're just the bad guy and they won't let up the victim role. We get caught in what's called the drama triangle. Stephen Cartman came up with this thing where it's you're either the victim, the hero, or the villain. And if they're stuck in victim mode, that's sometimes for some people is hard to give up because it gives them a moral superiority. They're better than you and they like that position. It's a lot of this is unconscious. But it's like, well, now you're going to make it up to me for the rest of your life. That's a very dangerous and very disgusting thing to do to somebody. I think it's actually worse than cheating on somebody. If you want to know the truth, if I cheat on you, if I cheat on my wife and she says, well, now I'm going to make you pay for the rest of your life, that's very sadistic. I'm going to make you pay. I'm not going to be affectionate with you. I'm not going to be physically. You're going to do everything I say. That's horrible. I want to see you suffer. Usually when people cheat, they're not trying to see other people suffer. They're trying to fill a hole in their own soul. They're trying to fill the validation that they don't know how to get on their own. And there's something broken with them for sure. But they're not doing it maliciously to punish their partner. That's rare. I'm not saying it never happens, but it's rare. So if you find that he won't give up his victim role, no matter how compassionate that you are, no matter how patient you are, then yes, it's too late. I can't give you a timeline because I don't know you. I mean, I wish I could, but I just can't. So you have to kind of use your instinct. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe. And if you have a question for me, John Dabach, there's instructions in the description on how to send me a message.